What up, Wizards? It's Dev. SPMTG, we like it in Magic, all the catchphrases that you like. And today, a different kind of video for my channel at least, because I don't usually cover the financial or the financial monocle side of Magic. Unless I'm doing budget decks, I come at it from the other direction a lot of the time. But lately there have been some really cool moves on the money side of things that I think are worth covering because they're interesting to talk about. And the bright side, they might lead you to discover that you've got a bunch of money just laying in a box somewhere in your closet, and that'd be pretty cool news. Now, price spikes are a fairly common occurrence. I think we all know that they happen with some regularity, but the rate at which these spikes are occurring has spiked recently. I was trying to avoid saying specifically that. I've gone and said it, but screw it, I'm keeping it. I think that in some of these cases, these are fairly easily explained. Some of the cards we're going to talk about today just went up because Kaldheim came out. You do cool stuff with them in Commander, so that's pretty easy enough. And then some of them are just buyouts and whatnot, but even with the buyouts, very often it's very interesting to delve into the reasons why people are buying these cards right now and what sets they're buying them from and all that. So there's going to be some fun information in this video, if nothing else, and information is good. Knowledge is power. So if you end up liking this video, just let me know in the comments section or hit thumbs up or whatever so that I can make more like it. Because it'd be fun maybe every few months to revisit the finance world and see what cards are moving and the reasons why. Because again, I think that's interesting information to have access to. But if you want more after this video's over, then check out MTG Stocks. That's where I got all the still images you're going to see in this video, all the charts and stuff that we're going to look at are from MTG Stocks, and they've got really detailed analytics on their site, and you can just get lost for hours just going down the rabbit hole of what's moving right now and what's trending and what's going down and stuff. So check them out. I'll leave a link in the description of them. And if you want more YouTube content like this, Heroes and Legends MTG has been on YouTube for a while, and they're actually one of the better market resources. They do a whole lot of videos on the market and they're watching of said MTG market. So I suggest them. I'll leave a link to their channel in the description too, so you can just check out more market content when you're done with this one. So without further ado, because I've been adewing this entire time, doesn't adieu mean goodbye? How does the phrase really translate? But in any case, without further not getting on with it, let's talk about 10 cards that have moved so far this year. And this is far from a comprehensive list. I want to point that out more. I'm adewing again right now. I'm right in the middle of adewing. But in any case, this is not a comprehensive list. Literally dozens, sometimes hundreds even, of cards move up and down, sometimes by significant margins every single day. So again, check MTG Stocks if you want a super comprehensive list of the cards that have moved since the beginning of the year. But this is just 10 that were interesting to me for different reasons. But in any case, let's get to number 10, which is Peacekeeper. Now, this card piqued my interest and just barely eked its way onto the list for a couple of reasons. Notably, I just talked about this card fairly recently on Twitter in the Old School Card of the Day series, which, yeah, if you care, I am bringing that back soon. I know a lot of you like it. But anyway, moving on. Something else I like about this is that it's actually had a couple of big price moves relatively recently without too much of a dip in between those spikes. So a lot of people are taking notice of this card, and even though these are straight up buyouts, Peacekeeper is probably a card that a lot of you old school players in the audience have in a box, maybe even as a playset, somewhere just kind of sitting there, and you didn't realize the card had gone from $2 to anywhere between $45 and $50 or $60, depending on when and where you get it. So, maybe those Peacekeepers can make a couple of bucks for you, or maybe you can join the crowd and realize that it's actually ridiculous Commander playable. Now, our next card on the list can be explained by recent cards coming out, and again, that's going to happen. A lot of these cards were spiked because Kaldheim came out. But in this case, it's slightly different because I think there's a couple explanations for it. But Kaeravek the Merciless is number 9. I think there's a few reasons for this. Not as notable as the fact that Time Spiral Remastered is coming out. And yeah, we'll make a video about that soon. These old frames. These old frames are so gorgeous on some of these cards. We'll talk about that in the future. But a lot of speculation has been going on with Time Spiral because Time Spiral Remastered is coming out. And it's a really hyped set. people are getting excited about it. So there is that. We've seen just some basic movement in Time Spiral because Time Spiral Remastered's coming out, even though they're very different sets. So you gotta remember that when you're looking at Time Spiral. But in any case, there's also the fact that Yurlok just dropped a couple of months ago, and Karavak goes really well if Yurlok is your commander, or if you're playing Karavak as your commander and Yurlok is in the 99 somewhere, because it puts you in this kind of rock and a hard place situation where if you don't spend mana, you're in trouble, and if you do spend mana, you're also in trouble. So it's just an interesting combination with Yurlok. And Yurlok has spiked a few cards since it came out, but I think the Karavak is one of the more interesting. The number 8 is the first of a few cheats on the list, because you know I can't make a list without talking about multiple cards in every single slot on the list. So I guess for... Hey, Ziggy. He's here. Hey, bub. He says hello. I guess for number 8, we're going to talk about medallions. Now, specifically, Sapphire Medallion is the big winner here because it's up to $60. Now, Sapphire Medallion, if I'm not mistaken, has always been the most expensive medallion, but it's really into the stratosphere at this point. But they're all going up, or at least the more useful ones, like Jet Medallion, for instance, is also up. So, you know, now that we've got Orvar, the All-Seeing, a lot of people are speculating that's why this card has gone up, but with every single medallion going up, it's either the fact that people are once again realizing that these are really, really EDH playable cards, and they are, or just the fact that Sapphire Medallion moved first has caused people to realize the other medallions exist and there's some sort of chain reaction going on. But ultimately, I mostly think it's because people realize the cards are dumb in EDH, and even though a lot of people were playing them to begin with, we're kind of going through a cycle in Commander where people realize cards are good, and then 5 years later, more and newer players realize those same cards are good. So I think that the medallions are sort of in that cycle right now, and they just keep going up as the years go by. But Sapphire especially has breached a very high price point at this point. Now, number 7 is a weird one because you wouldn't really expect this card to go up too much at all, which I guess is true of most of the cards in this list, but you especially wouldn't expect a 5th edition, or really any edition, of Shivan Dragon to go up, but that's the world we're living in. Now, in case you missed this news, Shivan Dragon from 5th edition, relatively new in terms of core sets, briefly went up to $30, and it's since settled down a little bit, but it's still way above what it once was. There was a time, just about a month ago, where you could get a Shivan Dragon from 5th edition for like 50 cents, possibly less, depending on the condition, but apparently, because of a buyout, Shivan Dragon from 5th briefly went up to 30, but it's not the only one. Shivan Dragon from 4th edition also spiked. Shivan Dragon from Revised also spiked, and there's a couple of things that could be happening here. First of all, dragons in general seem to be spiking via Shivan Dragon also spiked, and that might be because investors were confusing it with Shivan Dragon. Possibility, but via Shivan Dragon took a huge spike. Covetous Dragon randomly took a huge spike over the last couple of weeks, and I'm not really sure why. And various other dragons have just burst in value. So there may be one very rich person out there just buying up every dragon. That's one explanation, but the other explanation is that cards from old core sets, even ones that aren't Alpha Beta Unlimited, are steadily rising in speculation right now. You know, outside of the realm of dragons, we just saw Bad Moon from 3rd edition take a huge spike. This is one of my favorite arts and cards of all time for nostalgic purposes. Love me some Bad Moon. Sucks to know that it just went through the roof to get a 3rd edition copy. But even other stuff. Stasis from 3rd edition has recently went through the roof as well. So there's a lot of speculation on specifically 3rd edition cards, but we're seeing it spill over into 4th edition and 5th edition if the card is iconic enough, is usually what's happening. And if that 3rd edition speculation continues, that might mean you've got a ton of money sitting in a closet somewhere in a couple of years. So keep that in mind. But let's move on to our next entry, which is Ethereal Voyager, a card that I guess it just took people a year to catch on to. Now, at first glance, Forager can just look like your basic fat boy blue creature, do nothing rare that costs 15 cents. And for a long time, it was that. The card is relatively new. I think it's the newest card on the list. It comes from Commander 2020, but even so, it just recently spiked from about 35 cents up to $4.50, which is the lowest price card on the list. You can still get this for relatively cheap, but do go on ahead, look out for this, because this is, I believe, mostly the result of vintage speculation. This is going 100% in Delver decks that play lots of cheap spells, your dig 3 times, your treasure cruises, in formats where those are playable cards that aren't banned, right? But even so, you've got tons of 1 mana and even free in some instances, instants and sorceries that you can play with Phyrexian mana and other ways of playing free spells, filling your graveyard, right? So, this card has just become relatively popular over the last, I'd say, 4 to 6 weeks. And as such, it's undergone a relatively high price spike, but you can still get it for a reasonable price. You might want to get in on that while you can. And if you've got a couple of copies laying around because you bought some Commander 2020, congratulations, card's $5 now. So let's get to the halfway point on the list, number 5, where we meet Pygmy Hippo. If you're seeing this card for the first time, congratulations. I played with it 20 years ago and knew exactly how ridiculous it was, but apparently people are just now coming around to how dumb Pygmy Hippo is. And I'm going to do some speculation on this, but I think that's basically the long and short of it. Ethereal Forager, it took a year for people to come around on this. It took, 20 years for people to realize Pygmy Hippo is atrocious. Just think of all the extra mana this thing could possibly generate for you. Opponents empty out their pools and just get that mana. It doesn't matter that it's colorless. Who cares? Cast a big X-Spell or an Ulamog or Blightsteel Colossus. Who cares, right? There's so many things you can do with a Pygmy Hippo, and the stupid thing only costs a couple of mana to get on the table in the first place. It's just a good Magic card. You just look at it and you immediately know, hey, that's a good Magic card right there, bud. is all this is. Now, this might actually be getting some vintage play, for all I know, but from what I can tell, this is mostly just Commander speculation and possibly the result of a buyout, but I know that this card has become more popular in Commander as of the last 2 weeks, and it's actually one of the more recent spikes on this list. It's only a couple of days old that the card is actually spiked in the way that it has, and what a ridiculous spike. I can't even really calculate the percentage on this thing, because you could get a Pygmy Hippo for way less than $1 literally a couple of weeks ago, and now the card is up to $20. So anybody that played back then when Visions was out, maybe look through some boxes and see if you got a Pygmy Hippo or 2 laying around, sell all but one, and put that one in a Commander deck. Now for number 4, we have another, just a huge spike in terms of percentage. And that, this time at least, is easy to pinpoint why it occurred. And we're going to talk about Wimba Vollrath here. Now Wimba Vollrath was about 50 cents just a couple of months ago, and then Kaldheim came out, and with it came Orvar the All-Seeking. Now, when that happened, Wimba Vollrath shot straight up, and it has come down a little bit since its initial spike, but it is settled at a price that is still thousands of percentage points above, perhaps even tens of thousands of percentage points above where it first sat. So, just an unbelievable move for this card. And in case you haven't put it together yet, Orvar allows you to just copy stuff when you target it with things. Well, this is a spell that you can buy back and cast over and over that targets any permanent. So with Orvar in play, you can copy any permanent, and as long as you have mana, you can keep doing it over and over. So just a crazy card. And we've seen some other cards that are effectively, instants and sorceries that you can use over and over that target different things go up in price lately. I think Glamour Die is how you pronounce it, from Eventide. That card went up to $5 from 10 cents. So we've seen a ton of moves, mostly because of Orvar. And I think Wimba Vollrath is easily the biggest one. The card cost almost nothing, and I know some players from back in the day, in my personal life, that have 20 copies of this card laying in a box somewhere. Congratulations, they're $40 bills now. Now we're in the top 3, though, and in number 3, we're going to talk about another few cards this time that were affected greatly by the release of Kaldheim, and one specific card in Kaldheim, to be exact. And this time, instead of Orvar, it's Turgrid. I don't know that there was more excitement for a commander in this set than there was for Turgrid. I guess you could make the argument that people were more excited for Orvar, but I would say that Turgrid probably moved the prices of more old cards than any other card in this set, and it's still actually very expensive to buy a Turgrid, even though it didn't do anything in Standard. Deck Tech coming up, by the way. It looks like that one's going to win the Patreon poll that I've got going on right now, so if you want to see a Turgrid deck in Standard, I have a good one. We're going to do a Deck Tech soon, I promise, but Turgrid hasn't done much in competitive Standard, but it's done so much in Commander that it commands a pretty good price right now. So there's a reason that Turgrid moves so many cards in Commander, but it moves some particularly nasty cards, at least when you put them in the context of playing them alongside Turgrid. For instance, Dictate of Erebos. Look at that. Look at that real quick. This is probably one of the biggest movers in the entire pack, because this went up to $16 from literally nothing. The card is actually relatively new too. It's from Journey to Nyx, which is newer than a lot of the cards that we're going to talk about today. The same thing happened with Desolation, which is a card from Visions, a little bit older, went up to $7.50, which isn't a huge money move, but again, this thing was also, I think, 50 cents or so, just a couple of weeks back, or a couple of weeks before the set came out. But once Turgrid dropped, people quickly realized that this puts your opponents at a mana disadvantage where it doesn't put you at a mana disadvantage. You effectively get all the lands they sacrifice. Who cares if you have to sacrifice one land at the end of all your turns? They have to do that, but you get like three to seven lands every turn when you have a Desolation out and a Turgrid. So just a ridiculous combination there. But probably the most oppressive is Oppression. Oppression is just a very, very silly card with a Turgrid on the table, especially considering you're in a game with a whole bunch of opponents. So if you want to make enemies and also play with all of your friends' cards, play Oppression alongside Turgrid. This is easily the biggest money move in terms of cards that moved when Turgrid came out. Oppression went from a pretty decent price of like $3 or $4, I think it was, to $40. I believe it's now $40 to play with Oppression. $35 to $40 to play with an Oppression now, and that is all due to Turgrid. Really not a whole lot of supply enters a saga, especially of random junk bulk rares that people may or may not even know that they have, or may have even thrown out at some point. I just don't really think too many people cared about Oppression until a couple of weeks ago when suddenly Turgrid came out, and Oppression is the most playable card in Commander. Now, number 2 is just kind of a lesson in the fact that anytime a tribe is represented in a set, pretty much anytime, older cards from that tribe are going to move, which is, again, I think a lesson that funnels into learning that, anytime you have tribal cards from way back when, maybe hold on to those, because those will pretty much always keep their value and continue to go up whenever Wizard supports those tribes. And the more popular the tribe, the more likely your cards are going to go up in value. Case in point, Elves. Probably the most popular tribe in all of Magic history. If it's not Elves, what is it? Goblins, perhaps? I mean, I'm sure they could fight it out. I'm pretty sure a lot of market research led to Elves versus Goblins a few years back. So if those aren't the two most popular tribes, I'll eat my cards. I'll eat all of them. But in any case, a lot of cards from Elves jumped way up just because there's a lot of Elves representation in Kaldheim. So we got to see Elvish Champion take a huge jump, as well as Risk took just an enormous jump, a few 100% up as soon as Kaldheim was announced. has held that fairly well, although it has dipped some. But one of my favorite is Poacher from Nemesis, man. I really never expected this card to go up as much as it did, but this card was like, I think, $3.50 or $4 a couple of weeks back, because it's a pretty good card in Elvish Commander decks. But now people have really taken notice of it, and I think a lot of people that never got their copy back in the old days are buying their copy now, pushing the price of this card up, because it's like $30 to get a Poacher now, which doesn't make any sense to me, because the card's still not even like amazing or anything. But supply is relatively low, especially of a set like Nemesis that really did not get opened very much. So there may be very few Poachers out there, so it's difficult to poach yourself a copy. Now, you think I've been cheating on these last couple of entries, showing you 3 and 4 cards at a time and all that. But this time, I'm really going to try and fit a bunch of cards into number 1, because number 1 is an epidemic that I think we have to look into, that I'm honestly reticent to talk about, because I don't want to spread awareness of it, because if you do that, then it probably gets worse. But it's still something that I think people need to be aware of. Again, knowledge knowledge is power, and for a lot of people, this might literally mean that you do. I've been making this like joke the entire video, but with some of these cards, you might literally just have a box full of money and have just no idea that these cards ever moved, because lately there's been a rash of just cool looking old cards spiking for seemingly no reason other than they're cool looking. Seriously, in a lot of cases, these are cards from old sets with limited print runs like Legends, but in other cases, that's not necessarily true. We've seen cards from Fallen Empires spiking recently. It was a joke we all used to make, but it's true. Cards from Fallen Empires, Ice Age, Alliances, even Homelands have all spiked in value recently. And the only reason seems to be is that they're cool and that they're old. The art helps a lot. Right? Like, for instance, Xylon Sword from Fallen Empires, or Xylon Sword, it's like $7.50 or $8 right now. This card was literally 15 or 20 cents a couple of weeks back, but you got people going in and buying out either cool looking cards or just rares from these old sets, and they don't even have to be on the reserve list, and they don't even have to be rares for that matter. We see Bird Maiden underwent a price spike the other week because it looks really cool. Wall of Wonder, price spike, look how cool it looks. Rajan Spirit, literally zero play history ever except for the very early days of the game. Rajan Spirit spikes. Silhouette from Legends also spikes. And again, a lot of these are from Legends, but there are some that aren't, you know, like Meraxis of Keld from Weatherlight just spiked the other day for no reason. No reason at all. It just seems to be in a lot of cases, again, back to the Wall of Wonder example, cards that just look cool and have cool art, even if they don't have any sort of iconic history or competitive play history. All the card has to do is be somewhat old, not even particularly old. Again, it can be from Fallen Empires, Ice Age, Homelands. It's Homelands. A few cards have spiked recently for no apparent reason, other than, again, they're old, they're rare, and they're cool looking. And that's leading to spikes of cards you would never, ever expect to spike. So, again, I'm a little reluctant to say that this is even happening, because I don't want it to continue happening more and more, and that will happen as time goes on. We all hope our old cards increase in value, but these like random spikes of random things, I'm just not sure who they help, and they only hurt people attempting to invest in the game for the first time. So, you know, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I have very complicated sort of feelings, and I don't have like a take one way or the other on if it's good or bad, but my knee-jerk reaction to it is that that's probably bad for like Rajan Spirit to somehow be like $30 for no reason at all. Why is that sword from Fallen Empires $8? That can't be good, right? So, I don't know, again, complicated feelings, but I'm erring on the side of caution and not really giving like my full opinion, because I haven't formed my full opinion. Just in a reactionary way, bad. But I guess I'll have to do more thinking before I know if it truly is or not. You know, again, to a lot of people, it's going to be great to realize that Rajan Spirit is, you know, $25-$30 because they got 30 copies of Rajan Spirit from 1994 just sitting in a closet somewhere. So if any of this was good news to you, congratulations. It's good. But anyway, that's all I've got for this one. Again, way more cards have spiked than just these. I could have talked about any number of cards because this topic is just rife for content, honestly. But these are the ones that like interested me the most, or trends that I noticed that I wanted to talk about. So just let me know how you felt about it down there in the comments section. Again, if you want to see more of this kind of video, I'll try to get one out every few months or something like that. You know, I won't crowd the timeline with it, but I'll get a video like this out every now and again if you enjoyed it. But aside from that, again, make sure to check out MTG Stocks, link in the description, as well as Heroes and Legends MTG if you want just more market analysis by people who follow it more closely than I do. Aside from that, if you're interested in supporting the channel, check out the Patreon where you can vote on content for just $1 a month. You can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/SBMTGDev, or you can follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev. Easy enough. If you're interested in that old school Cards of the Day series, we're doing it again. Plus, you may have noticed that I'm going to be talking about some other stuff here soon. I will talk about the Lord of the Rings thing, I promise. Again, that's another thing that I'm still kind of forming an opinion on, because I think it's actually way more complicated than just like, what's my knee-jerk reaction. I think it's important that you take some time to think about that, because I think I have complex emotions on the Lord of the Rings thing, which has given me pause on opinions I may have had about other products in the past. But I'm probably giving away too much information, because, again, I'm not even sure that I've formed my opinion on the subject at this point. But I'll talk about the Lord of the Rings thing. Just a little teaser for you there. Anyway, there's a lot more content to be covered on the channel, so make sure you subscribe if you're into the fat guy on the couch aesthetic. But in any case, I'm done, so I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from the place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.